The battlefield was silent. Only the buzzing of flies filled the air. Smoke rose slowly from broken machines, and the ground was covered with black scars of fire. Among the ruins, a figure lay still, her body weak, her skin pale and cracked. She was a widow, her husband gone, her family gone, her people gone. The alien woman had nothing left, not even the strength to move. Her thin hands trembled as she tried to push away the flies swarming her face. Her lips were dry, her stomach empty. Her eyes half closed, she whispered a single word. But there was no one left to hear it. Her people had abandoned her. They had left her on the battlefield to die. Once she had believed they were strong, noble, and proud, but in their pride, they had forgotten mercy. She was no longer useful to them, and so she was left behind like broken metal. The sun burned above her, sharp and merciless. Each breath felt like fire in her chest. Her throat screamed for water, her stomach twisted with hunger. She wondered if this was the end, if her story was finished here, in the dirt and smoke. The buzzing of flies grew louder, crawling across her skin. She wanted to scream, but her voice was gone. She thought of her husband's face. The last time she saw him. He had promised they would see each other after the battle. But battles had no promises, only loss. Her mind drifted between sleep and pain. She could almost hear voices in the distance. Were they real, or just her dying thoughts? She did not know. She only knew she was afraid. Afraid of the silence, afraid of being forgotten. The ground shook slightly. Footsteps echoed through the ruins. Her eyes opened wide for a moment, weak and blurred. She expected to see her own people, coming back for her. But no, it was not them. They would never return. Instead, a shadow fell across her face, blocking the cruel sun. The figure stood tall, his outline sharp against the burning sky. He wore strange armor, scratched and covered in dirt. His breathing was heavy, and his eyes were tired but alive. He was human. Her heart froze, fear rising inside her chest. She had been told about humans. Her leaders had described them as monsters, cruel, savage, and full of hate. And now, one stood over her, his hand resting on a weapon at his side. The woman tried to crawl away, but her body would not move. Her strength was gone. Her life almost gone too. She turned her face away, waiting for the end. If her own people had abandoned her, then surely the enemy would finish what was left. But instead of striking her down, the human knelt beside her. He did not raise his weapon. He did not speak words of hate. Slowly, carefully, he opened a small pack at his side. Inside was food. Simple human food. The last of his rations. The alien's eyes widened. Confusion mixed with fear. Why would he do this? Why would an enemy give her food? Her own kind had left her. Yet this stranger, this so-called monster, was offering her life. The human tore the pack open and placed the food near her lips. His voice was quiet, low and tired, but she could hear the tone. It was not anger, not cruelty, but kindness. He wanted her to eat. Her hands shook as she tried to lift the food. She was too weak, but the human helped, holding it gently so she could take small bites. The taste filled her mouth, plain but warm. Her body cried for more. Desperate to survive, tears formed in her eyes. She did not understand. Why would he do this? Why save her when even her own people did not care? Was everything she had been told about humans a lie? Her world felt broken. But in that moment, hope flickered inside her chest. The human did not leave. He stayed by her side. He looked at her wounds. He pulled a piece of his own jacket and laid it across her shoulders. His eyes were still tired, but there was no hate in them. Only something she had not felt in so long: mercy. The alien woman tried to speak, but her voice was broken. She managed one word, weak and trembling. Why? The human did not answer with words. He only nodded, as if to say, "Because you need it." The flies scattered as the wind shifted. The smoke curled into the sky. And for the first time since the battle, she felt a reason to live. Her people had left her to die. But this human, this stranger, had given her his last meal. And with it, he had given her hope. The human soldier sat on the ground beside the dying alien, his breathing heavy, his body covered in cuts and dirt. The battle was over, but victory was meaningless here. Only ruins and silence remained. He looked at the alien woman, fragile and broken, lying in the dust like a shadow of what she once was. Her skin was pale, her eyes weak, but inside them still burned a spark. The spark of someone who did not want to die. He reached into his pack and pulled out the very last piece of food he had, a small ration bar wrapped in silver paper. It was nothing special, dry and plain, but to him it was survival. And survival was the only thing that kept soldiers moving. Still, without hesitation, he broke the bar in half and pressed it gently toward her lips. The alien flinched, her mind still fighting the stories she had been told since childhood. Stories that humans were monsters, that they would never show kindness. Only cruelty, but hunger was stronger than fear, and her body betrayed her mind. She opened her mouth, trembling, and let him feed her piece by piece. The taste was rough, but to her, it felt like life returning to her veins. She swallowed quickly. Ashamed of her weakness, yet unable to stop, tears slid from the corners of her eyes. Mixing with the dirt on her face, the human said nothing. His silence was strange, but not frightening. He only watched her with calm, steady eyes. As if trying to tell her she was safe without words, when she coughed, he offered her a canteen of water. Nearly empty, he should have saved it for himself. But he tilted it so she could drink every last drop. For a moment, she stared at him. Confused, unable to understand why her enemy was keeping her alive, she whispered, voice cracked and weak, "Why?" The soldier tilted his head slightly, but still did not speak. Instead, he just gave a small nod. Like a man who knew that sometimes silence carried more truth than words, the alien's mind spun, filled with questions. Was this human different from the others, or were they all like this, hidden behind lies told by her leaders? Her people had abandoned her in her weakest hour, and now here was a stranger, an enemy, giving her not just food, but hope. The soldier leaned back against a broken wall, his shoulders heavy, his face pale from loss of blood, even as exhaustion pulled at him. He did not close his eyes. He stayed awake, watching over her. She realized then he was wounded, badly, his side wrapped with makeshift bandages, dark with blood. He had given her food when he had none left, water when his throat was dry, and yet he did not complain. Did not ask for anything in return. For the first time in her life, she looked at a human and did not see a monster. She saw a man, tired, suffering, yet still choosing to show mercy. Her chest tightened, not from pain, but from something new. Something she had not felt since before the war. It was trust, fragile but growing. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying the faint echoes of voices. Both of them froze, listening carefully. The alien's heart-raced soldiers were near, their boots striking against broken stone. The human glanced at her, his expression sharp, and raised a finger to his lips, a silent command for quiet. She swallowed hard and stayed still, her body pressed low against the rubble. The voices grew closer, speaking in a language she could not understand, but she saw the tension in the human's face. These were not his friends, not his allies. They were hunters, searching the ruins for survivors, and if they found them, neither she nor the soldier would live. The soldier crawled closer to her and pulled a piece of debris over them, creating a shadowed space just wide enough for two. The smell of blood, sweat, and smoke filled the tiny shelter. Her breath came in short gasps, but his hand touched her. shoulder steady and firm. Telling her to stay calm, she nodded faintly. Her fear slowly turning into trust. For reasons she could not explain, she believed he would not let her be taken. The footsteps passed, slow and heavy. The voices grew louder. For a moment, then faded again, moving away into the ruins. The human let out a long, tired breath and leaned back. Closing his eyes for just a second, the alien woman realized then how much danger he had risked. Not just for himself, but for her. Her own kind would not have done the same. Yet here was her enemy, protecting her, her stomach twisted with guilt, shame, and confusion. She had been raised to hate him, to see him as less than life, but in the silence of the ruins, with only the two of them left breathing, she began to question everything she thought she knew. She turned her head toward him, studying his tired face. The cuts across his skin, the dirt in his hair, the way his hands trembled slightly from exhaustion. He was not a monster, he was simply a man, and for the first time since she had lost her family, she felt less alone. The buzzing of flies returned, but softer now, fading into the background. The ruins no longer felt like her grave, because in this stranger's presence, there was still life, still a chance. She whispered another word. One. She had almost forgotten, thank you. The soldier opened his eyes slowly. And though he still said nothing, a faint smile touched his lips. And in that moment, the alien knew her story was not over. Not yet. The night fell slowly over the broken land, the sky painted with ashes and stars. The human soldier sat near the alien woman, his back resting against a cracked wall. His eyes half closed but still watchful. She lay wrapped in the peace of his jacket. The only warmth she had felt since the war had taken everything from her. For hours they did not speak, not because they had nothing to say, but because words seemed too weak for the moment. The alien listened to the steady rhythm of his breathing, slow and heavy. Each breath carrying pain but also strength, she remembered. The lies her people had told her humans were beasts, killers without mercy. Enemies who lived only to destroy, but the man sitting beside her did not look like a beast. He looked like someone who had carried the weight of too much suffering. She wondered what had brought him here. Why he had chosen to save her when he could have left her behind. The ruins around them whispered with the sound of wind and shifting stone. Every shadow looked dangerous. Every echo felt like the approach of death. Yet, for the first time since she had been abandoned, she did not feel completely alone. The presence of the soldier gave her a strange comfort. Fragile but real. Her stomach growled softly, embarrassed. The human glanced at her, then looked down. At his empty pack, he had no more food. He had given her everything, and now both of them were starving. Still, there was no anger in his eyes, only a quiet acceptance. He reached down and picked up a broken piece of metal. With slow, careful hands, he carved a symbol into the dirt between them. It was a simple picture, two figures standing side by side, one tall, one smaller. The alien tilted her head, confused at first, then realized what he meant. He was saying they were together, not enemies, not strangers, but something else, something closer. Her throat tightened, tears filled her eyes again. No one had stood beside her since her husband's death. No one had given her that feeling of belonging. The soldier smiled faintly, weak but honest. He tapped his chest with two fingers, then pointed at her. It was not a word, but she understood he was telling her she mattered. For a moment, she forgot the battlefield, the pain, the lies, and only saw the truth in his eyes. But the night was not safe. In the distance, a roar echoed, not human, not alien, but something wild. The ruins were full of scavenger beasts, creatures that hunted the wounded and fed on the dead. The alien's body stiffened in fear, and the soldier immediately placed himself between her and the sound. His hand rested on his weapon. Though his strength was fading, his wounds had not healed, his bandages were soaked, and yet he stood ready to fight. The alien watched in silence, her heart torn between fear for herself and fear for him. If he fell now, she would be alone again, and the thought crushed her more than death itself. The sound of claws scraped against the stones. Closer, closer. A dark shape moved through the broken streets, glowing eyes reflecting the starlight. The soldier raised his weapon, but his hand trembled. He had little energy left, and if he fired, it might be his last shot. The alien woman reached out, gripping his arm. Her voice was weak but firm. No. Not alone. The soldier looked at her, surprised. She picked up a sharp piece of rubble, small and useless compared to his weapon. But it was all she had. Her eyes burned with determination. The beast attacked. She would not let him fight. Alone for a moment, silence held the ruins, the beast sniffing the air, tasting their fear. Then, with a low growl, it turned and slinked away into the darkness. Searching for easier prey, the soldier lowered his weapon slowly. His body shaking from relief and exhaustion, he sank down beside her, closing his eyes for a moment. The alien woman stayed close, her hand still resting on his arm. She realized then that the bond between them had already formed, fragile yet unbreakable. They were enemies by blood, but companions by choice. And in a world where both had been abandoned, that choice meant everything. She whispered a word she had not used in a long time. Friend. The human opened his eyes, and though he did not understand her language, he understood the meaning. He gave a slow nod, a tired smile, and leaned back against the wall, above them. The stars shone through the smoke, silent witnesses to the bond of two lost souls. The alien closed her eyes, not in despair, but in a fragile peace for the first time. She believed tomorrow might come, and for the first time she wanted tomorrow to come, not for herself, but for the stranger who had given her food, water, and hope. And as the night deepened, the bond between human and alien grew stronger. It was not built on words, not built on promises. It was built on survival, on sacrifice, and on a simple truth that even in war, kindness could bloom in the darkest ruins. The morning came cold and gray, the ruins quiet but heavy with danger. The alien woman woke slowly, her body weak but stronger than before. Thanks to the human soldier's care, he was already awake, sitting near the broken wall, his weapon resting across his knees. His face was pale, his bandages dark with blood, yet his eyes stayed sharp, watching every shadow. She pushed herself up, her hands trembling, and noticed he had given her the last piece of food. Nothing remained in his pack, not even water. Her chest tightened with guilt. He had given everything to her. And now he had nothing left, but before she could think of a way to help. Voices carried through the ruins. The human stiffened, raising his hand for silence. The alien froze, her heart pounding as the sound grew clearer. It was her people's language, soldiers calling out. Searching, the same voices she once thought were salvation now filled her with dread. She looked at the human, her eyes wide with fear. He gave her a calm but serious glance. Pressing a finger to his lips, he motioned for her to crawl behind a wall of broken stone. But before she could move, boots slammed against the ground. Drawing nearer, the human grabbed her hand and pulled her into the shadows. His grip was firm, steady, filled with the same strength he had shown since the moment they met. They crouched low, breaths shallow, as soldiers marched past, their armor clinking in the cold air. Her stomach twisted as she heard one of them laugh a cruel laugh. The kind of laugh she remembered from her own officers. The soldiers were searching for survivors, not to save them, but to kill them if they found the human. They would kill him instantly. If they found her alive, abandoned by her unit, they might kill her too. Her own people had left her to die. Why would they show her mercy now? One of the soldiers stopped, his head turning toward their hiding place. The alien's heart froze. her breath caught in her throat. The human tightened his hold on her hand. Ready to move, ready to fight, even in his weakened state. But before the soldier could step closer, another voice called out from the distance, and they turned away. The human wasted no time. He pulled her up, and together they moved quickly through the ruins. His steps were heavy, his wounds slowing him, but his determination never broke. The alien followed close, her own body weak, yet driven by fear and the strange trust she now carried for him. They slipped into an alley of shattered stone and twisted metal. Behind them, the voices grew louder again. People were not giving up. They were hunting. The alien woman knew this land well. She had trained here once. She whispered to him in her broken voice, pointing toward the old tunnels beneath the ruins. The human nodded, his breathing rough. They hurried through the rubble, climbing over broken walls and slipping beneath collapsed beams. Every step echoed with danger. Every shadow felt alive. The alien's chest tightened each time she looked at him. He was pushing himself far beyond his limits, and she knew it. At last, they reached the entrance to the tunnels. Hidden beneath fallen stone, the air inside was damp and cold, but it promised a path away from the soldiers. The human motioned for her to go first, but she shook her head and placed a hand on his arm. She would not leave him behind, not after everything. Together, they moved into the darkness. The walls dripped with water, the floor slick with mud, the air heavy with silence. Behind them, the soldiers' voices echoed faintly, growing sharper. Closer, the chase was not over. It had only just begun. The human stopped suddenly, his hand against the wall. The alien turned and saw his face, pale, drenched in sweat, his wound worse than before. Her chest filled with fear, not of the soldiers, but of losing him here in the darkness. Without thinking, she placed his arm around her shoulders, forcing her weak body to carry his weight. He looked at her with surprise, but she shook her head firmly. "Not alone," she whispered, her voice trembling but strong. For the first time, she was not the one being saved. She was the one saving. The human's lips curved into a faint smile, and he let her help him. The tunnels stretched long and winding, the sound of pursuit echoing behind them. Every step was a battle, every turn a risk, but the bond between them gave them strength neither knew they still had. They were no longer just running for survival. They were running for each other. At last, they reached a broken grate leading into the open air. The alien pushed the rusted metal aside, helping the soldier climb through, but as they emerged into the pale morning light, the sound of boots thundered behind them. The soldiers had found the tunnel, and they were closing fast. The human raised his weapon, his eyes blazing with defiance, despite his weakness. The alien picked up a broken pipe, her hands shaking, but her spirit strong. They stood side by side, not enemies, not strangers, but allies. The chase had brought them here, and now they would face whatever came together. And as the first shadow appeared at the tunnel's edge, the alien woman knew one thing with certainty. Her people might call humans monsters, but the true monsters were those who had abandoned her. The man standing at her side, wounded yet unbroken, was no monster. He was the only reason she was still alive. The soldiers poured from the tunnel like shadows, their armor glinting in the pale light. The human soldier raised his weapon, his hands trembling but steady enough to aim. Beside him, the alien woman gripped the broken pipe, her breath sharp and uneven for a heartbeat. Time froze, predator and prey staring across the ruins. Then the chase exploded again. The human fired a single shot, the blast echoing through the empty city. The soldiers scattered for cover, their voices rising in shouts of command. The alien pulled the soldier's arm, urging him forward, and together they ran. Every step was agony for him, his wound burning, his strength fading. But he pushed forward because stopping meant death. The alien supported his weight as best she could. Guiding him through broken alleys and shattered streets, her heart thundered, fear clawing at her chest. Yet the bond between them gave her courage. Arrows of light streaked past, striking the walls around them. Stone and metal cracked. Dust filled the air. The alien coughed, pulling the soldier into the cover of a collapsed tower. But the soldiers were relentless. Their voices grew closer, their footsteps louder. The human looked at her, eyes fierce, though his body shook with weakness. He lifted his weapon again, but she grabbed his arm, shaking her head, not fight. Escape, she whispered in broken words. His eyes widened in surprise, but then he gave a small nod. Trusting her, she took the lead this time, guiding him through the ruins. Her memories of the city, once her home, became their path to survival. She remembered where tunnels twisted, where walls had collapsed, where shadows could hide them. For the first time, she was not the one being saved. She was the one saving. The ruins stretched endlessly, every corner a threat. Behind them, the shouts of soldiers grew louder, closer, but ahead lay the burned fields. A wasteland of ash and twisted metal. If they could reach it, they might vanish into the smoke and dust. The alien pulled the soldier forward, her voice trembling but firm. "Run," he stumbled, nearly collapsing, but her grip kept him steady. Every muscle in her body screamed with exhaustion. Yet she refused to let go. She would not leave him, not after all he had given her. At last, they burst into the open fields. The air thick with smoke, the ground black and cracked. The sun hung low, a red ball in the haze, casting everything in the color of fire. The alien's chest heaved, her body shaking, but she forced herself onward. Beside her, the human limped. His face pale, yet still he moved. Behind them, the soldiers appeared, their voices rising in anger, their weapons flashing. Bolts of energy struck the ground around them, sending sparks and flames into the air. The alien tightened her grip on the soldier, pulling him toward a trench half buried in ash. Together, they threw themselves inside, just as fire rained down. Above, the trench was narrow, dark, filled with the smell of burnt earth. But it gave them cover. It gave them a chance. They crawled through the dust, their bodies scraping against stone and dirt. The alien whispered again, her voice steady despite her fear. Safe. Soon, the human nodded faintly, though his eyes were clouded with pain. She could see how close he was to falling, how little strength remained in him. Her chest ached not just with fear, but with something stronger, a need to protect him, to give back even a fraction of what he had given her. The trench led them to a cluster of broken machines. Giant war engines, long abandoned. The alien pulled him inside the wreckage of one, dark and hollow like a cave. There, they collapsed, their chests rising and falling in ragged gasps. For a moment, silence wrapped around them, broken only by their breathing. The human leaned against the metal wall, closing his eyes. Blood stained his side. The wound worse than before. The alien pressed her hands against it. Desperate to stop the bleeding, her tears fell onto his skin. But she did not stop. She would not stop. "You save me." "I save you," she whispered, her words clumsy, but full of fire. The human opened his eyes weakly, looking at her with something between pain and gratitude. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched hers. No words passed between them, but in that touch was a promise. Outside, the soldiers searched, their voices drifting through the smoke. They were close, too close. But the wreckage hid the human and the alien for now. Every second was borrowed time, every breath a gift. But together, they still lived, and together they still had hope. The alien tightened her grip on the soldier's hand. Her mind flashed, with memories of the day she was abandoned, left for dead. The pain of betrayal still burned in her, but it was no longer her only truth. Now there was something new trust, fragile but real. Built between her and a human stranger, the chase was not over. It would never truly be over. But as long as they stood side by side, they had a chance. The alien looked into the distance, into the smoke and fire, and for the first time since. The war began. She whispered words of defiance. We escape. The wreckage was silent, the smell of rust and smoke filling the air. Inside the broken machine, the alien woman pressed her hands against the soldier's wound. Her fingers shaking, his face was pale, his lips dry, his breathing shallow. She whispered to him, soft and desperate, stay. Stay alive, but his eyes flickered, heavy with exhaustion, his strength fading fast. The alien's chest ached with fear, a fear she had not felt even when she lay dying alone on the battlefield. She realized now if he died, she would not just lose a protector. She would lose the only soul who had given her kindness when no one else would. Her people had left her, but this human had stayed outside. Voices echoed through the ruins, soldiers still searching. They were coming closer, their boots striking the ash and stone. If they found the wreckage, if they found the human in this state, he would not survive, and she faced a choice, one that burned inside her like fire. She could leave him, slip away into the ruins, save herself while he lay too weak to move. Her people would welcome her back if she returned alive. They might even forgive her for being left behind. But as she looked at him, wounded and trembling, yet still holding on, she knew the truth. Her people had never cared. They had abandoned her. This human, this stranger, had given her his last food, his last water, his last hope. Her eyes filled with tears, her heart heavy but certain. She would not leave him. She could not, for the first time since her husband's death. She had something worth protecting, and she whispered again, her voice stronger this time, not alone. The soldier stirred faintly, his hand reaching for hers. She took it, squeezing gently. And in that touch, she felt his trust. Fragile but unbroken, he had chosen to save her without reason, without gain. Now, it was her turn to choose, and she chose him. She pulled his arm over her shoulders, forcing her weak body to carry his weight step by step. She pushed them out of the wreckage, into the smoke-filled field. Every movement hurt. Her legs shook, her breath burned, but she refused to stop. Her will stronger than her pain. The soldiers' voices grew louder, closer. She stumbled over broken stone, dragging the human with her. Her eyes searched desperately for shelter, a path, anything that could save them. And then she saw a 10-old transport hub, half buried in ash, its doors broken, but still standing. With all the strength she had left, she pulled him inside. The air was thick with dust, but it hid them well. She lowered him against a wall, her chest heaving, her body shaking with exhaustion. The soldier opened his eyes weakly, whispering something she could not understand. But she understood his meaning. Even without words, he was telling her to leave, to save herself. She shook her head fiercely, tears streaming down her face. No, no leave, she whispered, her voice breaking but firm. The soldier tried again, his voice rough, his lips forming the word go. But she pressed her hand against his chest, shaking her head harder. Not go. I stay, she said, her voice trembling but strong. And for the first time, he stopped resisting, his tired eyes softening with understanding. The alien searched the room, her mind racing. There had to be something, medicine, supplies, anything. Her hands brushed against an old case, broken but still sealed inside with bandages and strange bottles. She grabbed them, fumbling clumsily, but determined. She tore the soldier's old bandages away and pressed new ones to his wound. Her hands were messy, her knowledge little, but her will was strong. The soldier gritted his teeth but did not push her away. Instead, he let her fight for him, just as he had once fought for her outside. Boots struck against the ground again. Closer this time, the alien froze. Her heart pounding, they were still being hunted. And soon the soldiers would find them. She looked at the human, his eyes closed, his body weak. And she made her choice again. If they came, she would not hide. She would stand, even if her hands shook. Even if her weapon was only a piece of broken metal, she would protect him. Because he had protected her. And for the first time in her life, she felt stronger than fear. The footsteps passed, fading into the distance. The alien collapsed against the wall beside the soldier, her body trembling, her heart pounded in her chest. But relief washed through her like fire. They had survived another moment, another breath. Another chance. The human opened his eyes slightly. Looking at her with quiet gratitude, she smiled weakly, her tears still falling. "You saved me." "Now I save you," she whispered. And though her words were simple, no, the promise behind them was strong. The choice was made, and it could not be undone. She had chosen him, not her people, not her past, not her fear. And in that choice, she felt something powerful awaken inside her, a bond stronger than blood, stronger than war. The night deepened around them, the ruins still full of danger. But inside the broken transport hub, two souls sat side by side. No longer strangers, no longer enemies. The alien woman tightened her grip on his hand. And for the first time, she believed that survival was not just possible, it was worth fighting for. The night stretched long, the ruins silent except for the distant crackle of fire. Inside the broken transport hub, the alien woman sat beside the wounded human, her hand gripping his firmly. His breathing was slow but steady, each rise and fall. Of his chest, a fragile victory. She had chosen to stay, and now she waited. Guarding him against the darkness, her thoughts drifted to the past, to the day her people abandoned her. She remembered the pain, the buzzing of flies, the silence of betrayal. She remembered believing death was her only path, until the shadow of a human soldier fell across her, and now, looking at him beside her, she knew her life had changed forever. The human stirred faintly, his eyes opening just enough to meet hers. She leaned closer, whispering softly, "Rest. Safe." He blinked slowly, as if understanding, and closed his eyes again. Her heart tightened. How could someone she was told was a monster become the only reason she still lived? She thought of her leaders, the lies they told, the hatred they spread. They painted humans as beasts, cruel and merciless. But the truth sat right in front of her, weak, bleeding, yet still willing to give everything he had to protect her. Her people had betrayed her. But this enemy had given her hope, outside. The sound of ships rumbled across the sky. The alien woman looked up, fear rising in her chest. If her people found them, they would kill the human instantly. And if they saw her protecting him, they would call her traitor and kill her too. She glanced at the soldier, his face pale in the dim light. Her choice was clear, her vow already made. She would not let them take him. She would not let him die here alone. She would fight for him, even if it cost her everything. The night passed slowly, heavy with silence and danger. The woman did not sleep, her eyes sharp, her body trembling but ready. Every sound outside made her grip her weapon tighter. But the soldier's quiet breathing gave her strength, reminding her why she stayed. When morning came, pale light broke through the cracks of the ruined walls. The alien stood and looked out, the world scarred and broken, but not without hope. For the first time in so long, she saw the future not as empty, but as something she could still shape, and she whispered to herself, not alone. Never alone again. The human opened his eyes once more. Weak but aware, he tried to speak, his voice rough, broken. She leaned close, listening carefully, though she did not understand all the words. She understood the meaning he was telling. Her to live, to keep going, tears filled her eyes, her chest heavy with emotion. She shook her head softly, answering in her broken voice, "We live." Together, the soldier gave the faintest smile, then closed his eyes, drifting into fragile sleep. The alien pressed her forehead against his shoulder, whispering, "I protect you now." Time passed, but her resolve only grew stronger. She thought of her people again, of the cruelty of their leaders. She thought of the truth she had seen in this human's actions. And she knew when she returned, she would no longer follow their lies. She would tell the story of mercy. She imagined standing before them, saying, "Humans are not monsters." She imagined their shock, their anger, their denial, but she would not be silent, because silence had abandoned her. And she would not abandon the truth. The bond between her and the soldier was more than survival. It was proof that kindness could exist even in the middle of war. It was proof that an enemy could become a savior. It was proof that life could begin again, even when death seemed certain. The alien woman sat straighter, her eyes fierce with new strength. She was no longer the widow abandoned to die. No longer the broken soul swarmed by flies. She was alive because of a human. And she would carry that truth with her forever. She would honor his gift, not with silence, but with action. The soldier stirred again, his hand searching weakly. She caught it quickly, holding it tight, her tears falling. "You save me." "I save you," she whispered. The words now a vow, a promise written not in language, but in the bond they shared. Outside, the war still raged. Ships still filled the skies. Armies still clashed across the fields, but inside the broken transport hub, something greater than war had been born. Not victory, not defeat, but understanding, fragile and rare. The alien woman knew she would never see humans the same way again. She looked at him one last time before the dawn grew brighter. Her lips trembled as she whispered the words she had long forgotten how to say: friend, family, and for the first time in endless days, she smiled. The revelation had come, clear and unshakable. The monsters were not the humans, but the ones who abandoned mercy. And this human, who had given his last meal, his last water, his last strength, had given her something greater than survival. He had given her a reason to live. She leaned closer, her final whisper a promise to him. To herself, to the stars above, "You saved me. But one day, I will save you."